I know you have all had situations where you've presented multiple candidates against the same job and you presented the second and third candidate before you had feedback on the first. Stop doing that. We have to use the first candidate to test the validity of the requirement. And if you cannot spend any more time recruiting for them until you have that feedback, your work is going to be distributed in a way that causes you to work less and make more money.
Hi, I'm Kortney Harmon, Director of Industry Relations at Crelate. Welcome to another episode of the Full Desk Experience. Tricia and Jason are here, and they're going to run today's session. So yes, this is FDE. Yes, this is the Full Desk Experience live workshop. You know, we talk about growth blockers across your people, process, technologies. As we go into this, obviously today's topic is prioritizing your profit and unlocking 30% more revenue in 2025. If you have questions about the Crelate product as a whole, please email support@crelate.com. So with that being said, we have not one, but two incredible speakers with us today that are true powerhouses in the recruiting industry. So I'm going to introduce both of you, and you can tell me if I forgot anything. But first off is Tricia Tamkin. Tricia's journey in the recruiting world really began very young. She quickly rose to become a top producer at her firm. Over the years, she has founded multiple successful companies, including her own executive search firm, Wolf Tech. Tricia is renowned in her expertise for developing and delivering top-notch talent programs, prominent speaker on the most prestige stages across her industry, and I am so excited to have her here. Jason, how do you say your last name? I've looked at it 20 different times. How do you say your last name?
Just like Thibeault. Think Tim Thibeault, the football player. Just think smarter, taller, and better looking.
I love that. That is amazing. So Jason, he is a man of many talents and experiences. As I learned today, as I was pulling his background, it's really diverse and impressive, from early days in Air Force Space Command to successful career in manufacturing, and eventually now joining us where everyone wants to be in recruiting. So Jason has had many successful fields. He's an amazing trainer, speaker, and coach. Tricia, I'm so excited that you guys have found more essentials and where you continue to innovate and lead the way of recruiting, training, and coaching. So excited that you're one of our partners, and I'm just super excited for both of you to be here. So thank you both for joining us.
Oh, you are so very welcome. We'll just jump right in. That was such a nice introduction. Normally, Jason and I are like, hey, you know what? Just say they're going to blow your mind with good content, right? Because if you guys want to learn more about us, I mean, you can just go Google it. I am so focused on making sure that we are teaching you. So we're just going to start.
Or, just give us a call afterwards.
You can do that. Clearly, I'm Tricia Tamkin.
I'm Jason Thibeault.
And we would like to first say thanks for joining us. Like Kortney told you, you guys will have access to this video a week from next Thursday when they drop the podcast. So watch that. And our objective for today.
We are going to do a counterintuitive approach to prioritization that by the time we're done with it, it's going to seem intuitive.
It will seem intuitive when we're done, but having coached and trained thousands of recruiters, we have absolutely seen a significant issue in the way that you're running your desks, and we're going to help you fix that today.
Where you're going to spend your time and energy, and really how you move between that time and energy, is going to basically tell you what your ratio is, your efficiency of work to happiness.
It really is happiness. Revenue, I don't know, dictates happiness for me. I mean, they say money isn't everything, but boy, revenue makes everything so much easier. So what we want to do is get you to revenue faster. So let's talk first about why we might be interested in prioritizing. Why is this important?
Well, because we can spend a whole lot of time working on the wrong things, right? What we're trying to aim for is profitability. So I'm going to give a quick example here. Imagine you are the lone fisherman with a little lake. all to yourself and you've got like a dozen fishing poles and you stick them in the ground at various points around the lake, right? Well, how many fish you get in, how much you can feed the family, feed the village, etc., is going to depend on whether or not you're spending your time in the right spots around that lake. Are you prioritizing appropriately? If one area is giving you lots of fish, are you just leaving that pole in the sand and halfway around the lake, or is that where you're working on? So what we're really trying to do in terms of not fish, but dollars, is bring in as much as possible.
Right. Now, I imagine, and you guys come into the comments, into chat, and give us a yes. Have you ever had a situation where you absolutely went to town and you found the best candidates for a brand new requirement, and then it was crickets? They've ghosted you. You've worked on it, you've presented candidates, and now you can't get any traction. There's no send out.
I think it's bad enough when you send somebody over that's just right for it and it's crickets, but it's even worse when it's, some level of slate. 3 candidates I put together for you. Hello, those 3 candidates are still waiting. Those 3 candidates are getting cold. Oh, this was never a real job.
Right. A lot of times we end up working on jobs that just simply aren't real, right? If we can increase our efficacy, we're going to have a better reputation with our clients and our candidates. Because let's be fair, if we've presented an opportunity to that 3-person slate of candidates and presented it to our brand new client, and then we don't have feedback, that damages our reputation with our candidates as well.
We're the fishermen bringing home a whole lot of fish. That's more effective. If what you compare that to, oh, there's the village fisherman who's brought home nothing again. Looks like we'll be on berries and seeds for dinner tonight. That is that person's reputation. Our business success is our reputation. And frankly, faster and better prioritization so that we're working on the right things reflects to everyone else simply because they see better results.
Right. Now, if we're more effective with our clients, if we're more effective with them, it means they're going to come back to us. Okay. So our reputation on the client side is going to be critically important. And presenting them a whole bunch of candidates that they don't want isn't going to do that for you. So we're going to change the way that you're presenting your candidates. All right. Additionally, I've lost my mouse. There we go. All right. So you are the CEO likely of your company. If you are an employee at either a search firm or an internal recruiter, I still want you to run your desk like you're the CEO or owner of a company. A desk runs that way. And so if we take the position that we're going to be the CEO of our own desk, it means that we have to be really stringent in how we spend our time. We all have the same amount of time available to us, but some recruiters make a lot more money because they know how to effectively manage their time.
They are their own CEO standing behind them saying, is this the right thing to be working on right now?
Right. So I think you guys all know why we should prioritize. What we're really here for is how to prioritize. How are we going to do it?
If you really felt like there was no why, you probably didn't sign up for this program. Right. You're like, no, I don't prioritize anything. I just do whatever I want. And then you find yourself unable to get out of bed.
Right. Now, Kortney, if you want to come back on here, right, and talk about how does Crelate give your customers the opportunity to track their pipeline?
I'm not going to talk too much, but I will say one of our best features is our reporting. I was just actually on a call with Chris Hessen with our team, and it was going through stages for ratio reports, real-time reporting, and just the basic metrics that are right there to figure out how to not only run your desk efficiently for your KPIs, but really manage your organization too, are amazing. If you're interested in that, shoot me a message. I'll get you a demo and we can talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Kortney. Most ATSs in our industry aren't very good at this process. Crelate is. Okay. So if you are a Crelate user you already have the ability to do a very good pipeline. If you are not a Crelate user,
It looks like you're going to be investing in some notebooks.
you can do your pipeline in any number of ways. We have clients that keep their whole pipeline on a whiteboard. We have clients that do it on paper. Some people use Google Sheets. Though we think you should have an ATS that gives you a good pipeline view, you can manage your pipeline in whatever way is the easiest for you. It's just important that you're managing it, right? So you should be able to go to one place, whether that is Crelate or a sheet or a whiteboard, and you should be able to see every single open requirement and knowledge of an open requirement that you have. So we'll talk about that in just a moment.
The big point is that it's all in one place, right? Because it's very hard to prioritize when we need to prioritize in 10 different rooms. Like, no, let's prioritize in one room. Let's figure out in one place what thing we're working on next so that we just don't forget or miss anything.
Right. Now, I hope that any time that you are talking to a potential hiring manager, one of the questions that you ask is something to the effect of, hey, I'm out in the market all the time talking to all sorts of people. Is there a particular type of person that should I come across them, I need to bring them to your attention, right? That's knowledge of a job order. It's not a real job order. They haven't actually given it to you yet, but it's a hard enough person to find that should you have that person, it would be very easy to market that candidate into that hiring manager. So what we're going to put on our pipeline isn't just our real requirements. It's all of the requirements that we're aware of.
Right. One of the things that I have that is a little bit of a struggle sometimes is I am terrible at working, by which I mean, Tricia laughs, but it's a knowing laugh. I don't want to work on anything consistently for 8 hours straight, or really, let's be fair, 10 or 12 hours straight. But if I have a bunch of different things that I am aware of, the number one thing that my ADHD wants to do is anything else. But I can just switch priorities at that point. Now, that's not the best reason to switch priorities, but it's a good enough reason to switch priorities. I don't want to work on this anymore. I don't want to work on any of my jobs anymore. I'm going to work on this one that I just heard about. That's still better than going over and turning on daytime television.
Yes, it is. All right. So here is the information that we track typically inside of a pipeline. Priority is something we're going to talk about in a moment. And the entire basis of this methodology is going to be predicated on how you prioritize. Now, of course, we need to know what the client is and what position and when it originated, where it's located, the salary, how much they're paying us and under what structure, whether it's active or we're just aware of it, and whether or not we have coverage. So
now, it's interesting that that is the 10th bullet on there, because I think for a lot of people doing prioritization, they're going to try to choose their priority, what would be our number one slot on our spreadsheet, most frequently by something like the number 7 requirement, fee. I am going to base mine off of fee and maybe by client, because I know my clients well enough. I can do that. And we're going to tell you that coverage is going to be one of the single most important things that you could be tracking here.
It sure is. So let's talk about what some of the considerations are, because we're going to task you with not only developing that pipeline, but also prioritizing the open requirements that you have. So the first thing that we factor in our prioritization, has this client ever paid you money?
It doesn't have to even be a full fee. This could literally be like, well, I mean, they gave me an engagement fee. That's a more realistic requirement than a client that didn't, right?
It sure is, right? This is my number one criteria. If they haven't paid me money in the past, they're brand new. Therefore, they're unknown, okay? And if they're unknown, they're going to go a little bit lower on the priority list. Have you made multiple placements with them?
You might have had one in the past that was just lucky, but if this is somebody you've been working with, you know them, you know how they work, and it's going to go directly into that prioritization, right? If you've been successful making multiple placements there, that's a really good reason to move them up in priority.
Right. Now, this is one of those factors that I think sometimes we lose sight of, right? The opportunity has to be compelling. And your job as a recruiter is to take that maybe somewhat bland opportunity and figure out how to make it compelling to the candidate. I am sure that all of you have had requirements in the past that weren't compelling, right? If it's hard to sell a candidate on why this opportunity would warrant them resigning from their existing job to take this new job, then we're not going to be able to do anything with it. If it's not compelling, they're not going to want to leave. If it's not compelling, I'll even make the argument that you don't want the requirement.
I would go a step farther because I mean like this. First, I'm going to say that if it was a truly compelling opportunity, they might not be hiring a recruiter at all, right? That one of our jobs is to take an opportunity that probably isn't as desirable and tell the story differently, tell the story better than they've been telling it, right? If the story was that compelling, it's going to fill itself before I get a candidate in there, right? Like that's too much. On the other side of this, though, is that's on us. It's a whole different class. I'm not going to go into detail now, but selling your candidates is part of our job, and making their story, a compelling one for your clients is something you have to do.
That's a really good point, Jason, because if it was uber compelling, they would never hire a recruiter. So we almost want like that Goldilocks of compelling, right?
Right. I mean, like, we've got an election going on, in which case there will be people spending millions of dollars trying to get the job. That's really compelling.
How about
like, it's a high-powered job, but that idea of most positions can't be that compelling, right? We have to be the one that's being compelling.
Right. All right. So is the fee contingent or engaged? And what is the total fee structure? I don't think that we need to spend a lot of time telling you that the best use of your time is working on the largest fee requirements.
And we'll add to that, in case you haven't heard, fee requirements that come due sooner. Money in your hands sooner. So if there is a fee schedule where you are going to get paid on this one, it's a huge, nice, fee or $60,000. Thing is, we're going to pay you $5,000 a month over the course of the next year. That's actually not bad, right? That's consistent, that's stable. I'll take it, except for the fact that sometimes companies have their own bumps in the road. My client firm could go bankrupt and I don't get my second half of my payments. So while it was good and consistent, I didn't get paid. So that prioritization means that I am going to always move things where my fee is going to arrive in my pocket sooner. That's a higher priority.
It's closest thing to money, right? Just at a larger scale. Larger scale. All right. Is there urgency? Now, we know we like to talk about the difference between a profit center and a cost center. So I'm going to give this to you in an example that I think will make a lot of sense because we're all recruiters, right? If I'm a recruiter and I work in an agency, I am part of the profit center. I am actually generating revenue through my recruiting. If I'm an internal recruiter working at Crelate, I'm cost center because the function of Crelate isn't recruiting, it's recruiting software. Okay. So if you look at your positions and you try, let me give you one more example and take it out. Let's say you're an accountant
at Coca-Cola.
You're cost center. Let's say you're an accountant at KPMG that is billable. You're profit center. Okay. So cost center versus profit center. If the opportunity, the job falls into that profit center bucket, which is any salesperson, anyone billable, anyone directly responsible for generating revenue. If they fall into the profit center, the urgency is significantly higher because not only do they have the open job, they're losing revenue by not having the job filled. So one of the factors that we always consider with urgency is profit center or cost center. If the role is in the cost center, it's a lower level of urgency inherently. If it's in the profit center, there's an extensive urgency because they're losing money. So for those of you that have never looked at roles like this, I want you to imagine a salesperson, and that salesperson has a $1.2 million annual quota. If they have that annual quota and it takes that company 6 months to fill that job, they have lost $600,000. It is a whole lot easier to negotiate premium fees when there is an opportunity loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars on the back end of not getting the job filled.
Right. I often think of that inside of recruiting organizations would be very easy. Like if you could imagine somebody that's like, hey, you know what? I work straight on commission. I want, pretty standard commissions for recruiters. And I just need a place to hang my hat and someone to give me business cards and whatnot. I typically bill about, $300,000 a year. Can I come work for you?
I mean, that answer is yes. Like if somebody is coming to you and saying, can I just come work for your search firm and I bill about $300,000 and you don't have to pay me a salary? Heck yeah. Right?
You would take that because at that point, there's basically no risk in all money. Well, when we're dealing with Profit Center, what we're dealing with is people that are just bringing in money.
Right. All right. How complicated is the interview process?
This is another client one.
Right. Like, have you guys ever had a situation where you need like a 12-person panel interview with 100% consensus to get an offer?
Man, if I give my client to this firm, they're going to be, in this loop for the next like 12 interviews to finally come on board, right? That might be something that would say, oh, you know what? This client's complicated interview process makes it take longer, farther away to money, right? It's harder also on my candidates. These are people that I'm representing. It's stressful for them to go through the interview process. So they're more likely to leave the process on their own, maybe without a job at all.
The longer the process goes, the harder it is to keep the momentum going for the candidate. So complicated doesn't just have to mean long, right? Complicated could be maybe you are a tech recruiter and your client mandates code samples before they'll do an interview. That's complicated. It is very hard to assign homework to a passive candidate before they've had an interview and they're excited about it.
Oh, you mean the code process has to be done in the office during an in-person interview where you're going to stick them in a room with a monitor for an hour. Now I've added another level of complication to my code review. So now as I keep increasing it, my priority for that job has to be lower.
Right. All right. What is the timeline to offer, right? And let's be fair, what's the timeline to payment? Some of you have agreed to contracts that have extended guarantees and payment isn't made until that guarantee period has ended. For the record, don't tolerate that, right? It doesn't matter if the guarantee period has happened because hopefully you're not refunding money ever under any circumstances.
Now, there's a lot of ways to consider this particular one too. I've had a client in the past that didn't take more than 3 candidates. They would always make their decision by the 3rd candidate. I don't know who taught them that. I loved it for that reason. But that actually shortens my timeline, right? If I have shown them a 3rd candidate that's not even a good one, they're going to choose between the first 2. I wouldn't do that. Let's work honestly. But that challenge means that that was a client that gets moved up in priority.
Right. Well, and reusability, like if you work in, let's say you have a requirement, but you actually have 3 different clients that have the same general need. If there is candidate reusability and I've got multiple requirements from different companies for the same kind of person, that shoots up really high on my priority list.
Right. As soon as these kinds of things happen to us enough, I think this is how niches form.
It is. So what's the long-term potential of the client? That doesn't mean the long-term viability of their company. It means their long-term potential to you as a recruiter. Meaning, if I have a requirement from a company and it looks like they're only generally hiring 1 or 2 people a year, that's a low potential client. If it is a client that is growing by leaps and bounds and they have a ton of needs and openings, now they're going to be much higher on my priority list.
Right. Oh, they're going to need 3 accountants in every office and they're opening 3 offices a month. This is going to be long-term potential. I can't fill them at that rate. Bring it on.
Right. I love clients where they have so many openings that there is literally no way possible for us to fill them all.
And we got to start getting split partners.
It's beautiful when that happens. All right. Let's talk for just a moment about liking your clients. If you don't like your clients, you don't like your life. Okay. If your clients aren't bringing you joy, if you're looking at this on your screen and thinking, oh my God, none of my clients bring me joy.
Different client time.
Yeah, you need new clients then, right? Like we want clients that are fun to support, that return our calls, that make decisions, that aren't unrealistic in their expectations or unreasonable in their requirements in order for you to like your life.
And you know what? Sometimes that's even enjoying telling the story. And a client story doesn't have to be devoid of problems. In fact, a story that's devoid of problems is very boring. Here's one. I went to the store and bought milk.
Not a fun story, right? But if he tells you, I went to the store to get milk.
And when I got there, they're all out. I add a problem and already, what's the twist?
Right.
But that's sometimes the problems do cause joy. They are a better story.
They are. We have a lot of people in the world, our candidates, that want and crave a little bit of a chaotic environment because it enables them to come in and very quickly make an impact. So don't shy away from the company that has challenges. That kind of company can still give you a whole lot of joy.
Right. Sometimes people want to feel like they're being hired to do something, solve a problem, frame the problem, right? But if it brings you joy to share that and be doing about it, then that's probably a better client.
It is. All right. So this is an important slide because it kind of consolidates all of it for you for your prioritization, right? Like I'd tell you, if you don't want to wait, go ahead and print screen that on your computer
pull
now.
Pull up your phone, double tap the button to make it go to camera mode. You're good to go.
And take that picture. This is how you're going to determine what the prioritization is. Now, as you go through this process and you start prioritizing, you're going to find that if you've never done this before, you're likely not going to be good at it right out of the gate. This actually takes a little bit of time and instinct and experience to be able to really know your own client base. Like Jason and I couldn't come to your desk, look at your clients and prioritize them for you. We'd have to ask you a million questions to get all of that history to understand exactly who that client is and what they mean to your firm or your desk to be able to prioritize it. You're actually the only one that can do it. Your instincts will get better because heads up, we're going to change the prioritization all day long.
This is one of the big challenges as we come through here. Prioritization isn't something that you do once in the day, maybe the night before, maybe the morning of, as part of your planning. Oh, my top priority role today is this, and that's what I'm going to work on. So let's talk about how we're going to change that a little bit.
Right.
You get to decide for yourself, right? You could score them as simply as, letter grades, like it's a report card. You could decide that, you want to use numbers. Heck, you could even decide that, your numbers are number 1 is the top or number 10 is the top. I work on my 10s first, top priority. Up to you how you want to score them.
We don't care at all. It makes no difference. The only thing that matters is that you pick a way to score them and implement that scoring system into your pipeline.
We want to be able to quickly decide what's next.
Right. So let's talk about how we're going to implement. First and foremost, here's your goal. The most number of candidates distributed across the highest volume of opening.
Back to my lake example, that would be if I had my lake and I had, not one fishing pole, but lots of fishing poles. And I put them in different spots around the lake. I don't want to put 12 fishing poles around one fishing spot and hope that that's where the fish are today. I want to put them in different places, right? So this is a large volume of rolls in a large, so that's different fishing spots, and a large area of coverage. That's all of our fishing poles at the different holes.
Now, this seems, I'm sure, so obvious. Like, there's nothing counterintuitive about this. There's nothing silly about it. Like, of course, we want to have the most coverage on the most number of jobs. Okay. So let's talk about what coverage is, and then we'll get creative with you guys and show you how you're going to make a change that's going to increase your revenue by 30% next year without more work. Okay. So we have coverage in our world. First level coverage is you've presented a single candidate against that role. That's your first level of coverage.
All right. We've got all of our fishing poles baited and stuck in the water in different places.
Now, our second level of coverage is our first send out against the job.
Oh,
Okay.
We got that line shaking. Let's pull that out.
Now, our third level of coverage is going to be a candidate that is moving forward after their first interview.
Throw it in the bucket. That one's a keeper.
Okay, so our fishing analogy works completely beautifully with our coverage, right?
And Tricia didn't even know I was going to make one because I just kind of came up with it about 20 minutes ago.
Oh, funny, right? So one of the things that I know all of you do is you present a candidate and then you keep working on the job. You want to have a backup candidate or a third candidate or, God forbid, a slate.
Because this is a top priority role. So, of course, we're going to put more work. We're going to put more fishing poles into the water here because this is a high priority. But that's not what we're doing. Instead, we're trying to spread our efforts across all the roles so that as soon as we get movement in one place, that's where we pay attention, move it along, and then put the pole back in the water and move to the next area where we have any sort of action.
Right. So let's talk about raffles. This is hands down the easiest way to understand how we're going to change your prioritization. I want you to imagine that you have gone to some type of a charity event and there is like raffles. They're trying to raise money. And so maybe there's tables set up and there's big baskets of things that they're going to raffle off. And you go to the person selling raffle tickets and you buy, 10 raffle tickets for $50 or however much it is. Now, if you have those 10 raffle tickets, you have the opportunity to look at what's available on that table. And what we tend to do as recruiters is we pick the thing we want the most and we put all 10 tickets in that one little bag.
Wow, look, the grand prize is a Volkswagen. I'm going to put all my tickets there. That's way more valuable than this spa day. And then everyone else is putting their 10 tickets towards that Volkswagen too.
Right. So what we actually want to do, if we think about each of our candidates as a raffle ticket, you want to distribute your raffle tickets across as many different things that you can win as you possibly can. I don't want 10 tickets in for the car. I don't mind a ticket in for the car, but then I want you to spread the rest of the raffle tickets out across a whole bunch of different opportunities.
Oh, we didn't mention that we put the car on a hiring freeze. The whole engine block is seized. That's my equivalent of a hiring freeze. So, you put all 10 tickets into there. Sometimes they just take the prize away.
They do. And if we put all 10 tickets in for the car, we're kind of screwed.
But I'm less worried about it if they take that away and I still have 9 other chances of winning.
9 other things. Okay. So what we're going to do, okay, first, our primary focus is first level coverage. Okay. Our primary focus is first level coverage on our top priority position. So as soon as we have our contract signed, please don't do work on deals that you don't have contract signed for. Okay. First, we're going to go ahead and decide if it's a postable job. Will an active candidate possibly respond to this? If the answer is yes, post it immediately.
I know there's some old guidance about not posting jobs. And what's great to me about that is when that logic came out, when there was first job boards roughly 25 years ago, the predominant people running the workforce were baby boomers. And they had grown up with jobs being posted, in places like newspapers, and it never would have been a more advanced role. But for Gen X, they were entering the workforce. Some of them had been in for a few years at the point, Monster and Career Builder are coming out, and they used these online tools for their first jobs. And frankly, they go in the bathroom and they check on their phone to see if there's a better job available. Most days they're having a bad day at work. So we should post jobs.
Yeah, don't let anybody tell you not to post jobs. I mean, there are jobs that are not postable. My favorite example is one of our coaching clients that works in the elevator industry. She had an opening for an accounting professional in Colorado Springs that had to have elevator industry experience. No one is going to respond to that job that's qualified.
Right. Probably because even if we were to look at the whole of Colorado Springs and be like, okay, there's probably a lot of accountants there. But with elevator experience, what's the chance that the one in Colorado who also has elevator industry experience is looking online while you're posted?
Right. Now, we've had a lot of people tell us, oh, I don't post jobs because I recruit in the C-suite. I just want you to know we had a coaching client recently fill a CFO role with an ad response off of Indeed. Like, come on, the people, like Jason said, they grew up professionally with Monster and Career Builder. Even at a C-suite, they're going to jobs. So active jobs are going to get you to that first level of coverage faster than anything else. And we have to test the requirement. We have to give them a person before we know if the requirement is real.
Right. A lot of times I consider that part really kind of the baiting the hook area. What we're trying to do is get coverage across all of our roles. So that's one person submitted into each of my hiring managers. If I can find whoever I can get out there the earliest, the quickest, even if I've got to be like, hey, trust me on this one, I know they don't line up. Because the reason is until they respond and say, yes, Jason, please help me schedule this person on my calendar. At that point, that's real. Before then, I'm just sending candidates out into the void. Until they respond, I don't know. So I want to get one to everybody and get them to say yes. That's when we get to step two.
That's when we get to step two, right? So we're going to leverage active candidates in order to determine the viability, how real the requirement is. Now, there's a weird thing that happens in our industry because if you've been doing this for 5 minutes, someone at some point has told you passive candidates are better than active candidates. That's a common statement in our industry.
I'm not going to argue who's better or worse. That just sounds degrading in the first place.
It does.
I'll tell you this, active candidates are more responsive. They're in the process somewhere likely. They're more likely to respond to a job ad and then take a different job because they're talking to people right now. Those are the people I move the quickest on, not my passive people. My passive people are passive. I've got to make them active. My active people are the ones I can lose.
Here's what's crazy. Let's say you're working to fill a job and you post the job and you're sourcing passive candidates. And you have an ad response that comes in at the same time as an email response from a highly qualified passive candidate. Which one do you go to first? The active candidate or the passive candidate? Because in our industry, the vast majority of recruiters are going to say, nope, I'm going to the passive candidate because I suspect that they are a higher quality. That is categorically wrong.
That's qualitization, not prioritization.
Right.
We're trying to go with some speed, right? We are going to lose the active candidate if we don't interact with them as quickly as possible. The passive candidate is unlikely to go anywhere, even if you feel that they're better. That doesn't matter now. We're not worried about that.
All right. So here's where it starts getting interesting. Okay. Here's the change that you're going to make. Once you have your entire prioritized list for your pipeline of all the jobs that you know of, every job, as soon as you have first level coverage on that job, stop working on it. Don't work on it anymore. Okay. Once you have first level coverage, move to your second most important job and get first level coverage on that. Then move to your third most important job and get coverage on that. First level coverage is just a single candidate submittal. That's it.
I have sent a person to my client with the hopes that they say, yes, let's schedule. That's my first level. That's one level of coverage before I move on. I will add in here a little different than Tricia. If, let's say, I'm on that second position, I've got one in, I'm working on the next one, and like, I don't feel like I'm getting any traction or getting anywhere, I'll move priorities again. Because work that I'm doing that doesn't have a result, whether it's frustrating me or not, isn't good quality work. If it's frustrating me, then it's extra bad quality work. Moving to the next priority to give my brain a little switch up, a little break. Maybe I prioritized wrong. And the second one that I was having trouble with is a harder to fill role than I suspected. And it's going to give my brain a good break and get tickets into jars faster.
Right. Now, throughout the course of the day, we told you already, you're not prioritizing once. This is a living, constant document, and it's going to drive your activity throughout the entire day. So let's say that throughout the course of the day, I have, let's say, first level coverage on my first two jobs. Now, my top priority job comes back and I get the send out. They schedule my candidate.
That was terrific, Tricia. Let's put them on Monday.
Now I have to make a decision. Do I want to keep working on whatever position I'm working on, or do I need a second candidate for my top level prioritization? Let's say that what came in wasn't a send out. Let's say that what came in was, hey, Trish, you missed the mark on this one. Now, for sure, I'm going back, because even negative feedback proves to me that the job is real.
The client wanted to move forward, tried to interact with the person I sent them, and found my work to be less than sufficient to the job, and is saying, hey, do this differently. I've either got to convince them that my person's good or go back to the drawing board. And it's okay. At that point, the client has said, I want to hire. So that's not the same thing as no response. That's a move forward.
John, great question. Is this strategy for contingent searches only, or do you use it for engaged or retained? I use it across the board. Like if you have a completely retained desk, absolutely. Completely engaged, absolutely. Completely contingent, absolutely.
If you're mixed, then of course you're going to take certain roles that have retained or engaged you, and you're going to move them up in the prioritization for two reasons. One, they paid for the privilege. Two, they've proven to you that they're willing to pay. It's a real requirement.
Right. So you get, as a recruiter, so much inbound information and movement throughout the entire day. If I get feedback on a candidate, that's enough information for me to look at prioritization. If I have presented a candidate, maybe I've presented 3 candidates separately, never, ever at once. Think about this methodology.
You wouldn't be submitting 3 candidates at once, because you would be moving priorities if they had gotten one candidate and not responded to you.
Right. So the whole purpose of this, I know you have all had situations where you've presented multiple candidates against the same job, and you presented the second and third candidate before you had feedback on the first. Stop doing that. We have to use the first candidate to test the validity of the requirement. And if you cannot spend any more time recruiting for them until you have that feedback, your work is going to be distributed in a way that causes you to work less and make more money.
Now, some of that is some of the information that we're talking about here, with new pieces of information impacting your prioritization. When I said before, the job's harder than I thought it was. that's a new piece of information. If a potential candidate on the phone with me says, oh, you know what? Another recruiter already talked to me about that role and I don't want to work there. Oh, I thought this was exclusive to me. That changes my information and my prioritization, right? Because you're constantly talking to people, doing research and gathering information. So as soon as I find out something, it should impact what I'm working on.
So I want you guys to get in the habit of asking the question every time there's any movement on any requirement, positive or negative. How does this impact my prioritization? So I'm going to get hardcore with you guys. On my own desk, if I present the first candidate and I don't have feedback and I have an interview scheduled for a second candidate, I reschedule it. I do not complete the interview on the second candidate until I have feedback on the first. This is how I protect my time on my desk and make sure that I'm never, ever recruiting against a job other than one candidate if it's not real, or if they're not going to respond, or if there's no movement.
Well, and you can hear from what Tricia is saying that if we fell into that category of jobs which have, reusable candidates, that'd be a great time. Like, oh, well, I can't put this second candidate against this job, but since I have reusable roles, I'm going to use a different job and I'm going to tell them about that company.
Right. All right. These pivots happen multiple times a day. It's not like there's a lot of people that think that what we need to do is write the plan, execute the plan. And in theory, that's a great concept if everything on your desk was static for an entire day, but it's not. Like you would have to have such a low activity desk.
And a great level of discipline, even with a low activity level
Right.
desk. I'm only going to do business development from 8 to 9:30. I'm only going to work on priority one job from 9:30 to 11. Like, no, it doesn't really work that way. And yet almost all of us do our planning and scheduling as though it does.
So we need to change that, right? You can have a plan. Just understand that your plan is going to change as new information comes to light. We have to pivot what we're working on.
It's kind of like a chess game, right? Every time the opponent makes a move, I might have to slightly modify my plan.
Right. So hopefully we're not hurting anybody's feelings with the picture. It was just too appropriate for this slide.
But sometimes people do put their feet up on desks.
Isn't that funny, right? If you have a misbehaving hiring manager, punish them. Don't punish them directly. Like, don't actually
That's
punish
a different
them.
class too.
Right? Punish them in your prioritization. When you have a manager that comes back to you on a perfect candidate and says, oh, I'm sorry, they only worked at this company for 2 years and 11 months, and we require all candidates to have been at their job for at least 3 years.
That 1 month makes them a job hopper.
Like, come on, right? So if the client isn't responding, punish them. Move them down on the priority list and don't work as much on their jobs until they start behaving better.
I want to address a question that came through chat. So how kindly do clients or employers respond to your unwillingness to allow a second interview with another candidate you've submitted until you've gotten feedback on the first candidate who interviewed? So what we're looking for our feedback at this point, Lee, isn't the interview feedback. What we're looking for is, are you going to schedule this candidate I've given you for an interview? Right? I just need them to take that person and schedule the interview through us, through them, however you do it on your own desks. That is they're not getting a second candidate until they've interviewed the first candidate.
No, they're not getting
until they've agreed to interview.
Or giving you negative feedback, Lee. It's okay for us to miss the mark sometimes. Like if you present candidate number 1 against job A and they won't give you feedback on that first candidate, don't give them a second. That's what we're saying.
That means if you post a job and you have 100 responses, and as you're going through them, 3 of them are great, and you can submit all of them to your client, you're submitting one because we don't know yet if it makes sense to give them 3 people. They haven't responded to the first one. As soon as they do and they say, this person's great, Jason, I'm going to schedule them, I found somebody else for you too. In fact, I found 2 more people because they've agreed to start scheduling.
Right. So yes, Lee, we are only talking about submittals, not sendouts. Okay. Submittals only. So when we're looking at a plan like this and this level of prioritization, where our focus is at the early stages of the process, right? So if I am, this is prioritizing all of your outbound activity. Inbound activity interrupts your day. So I'm going to be reaching out over and over to candidates, but only until I get my first level of coverage, which is 1 submittal.
I would further add that a desire, though it's a slightly different subject, a desire to interview my candidate for a second round counts as positive feedback.
Yeah,
that's it. Like if they're like, I want to talk to them again, I count that as positive feedback. That's not, no, thank you, Jason. That's negative feedback.
Now let's actually go in a weird direction with that. What do you do when you have one candidate in play that is moving forward and they like them? Do you give them the second candidate?
That's such a great question, Tricia, and I know your answer.
I don't give them the second candidate.
It's kind of like if someone's like, hey, you know what? I'd like to try the chicken wings for the appetizer, and I bring them out the chicken wings and they're enjoying them. I'm not going to bring them out the mozzarella sticks just in case. I'm going to wait until they say, like, you know what? Those chicken wings didn't hit the spot. Can we order a different app? Of course. So at the point that something's going well, I'm not going to try to throw a stick into my bicycle spokes and throw the whole thing off. Like, no, I'm just going to let it play out. I've got these candidates and I can keep them warm.
The number of times that we see recruiters add friction to a deal with new candidates at the 11th hour is inconceivable to me. We have got to hold on to them. Now, John asked a beautiful question. That makes sense to me, but I do worry about those other candidates not submitted yet, applying on their own or perhaps getting submitted by another recruiter. That is a completely legitimate concern, John. If it is an active candidate, and let's say you've already presented one, you don't have feedback, and now you have 3 more active candidates that you're interested in presenting. What I do is I send an email to the client that says, I'm still waiting on feedback from you for John O'Donnell. And to be advised, I have 3 other individuals that I'm actively engaged in conversations with. They are Lee and Jane and Jason, and I give the full names to solidify my candidate ownership. So it's okay for you to tell them the names of the people that you are continuing to interview, give them that information, secure your candidate ownership, but do not present those candidates until you have feedback. We only do that as a safety measure on your candidate ownership if you're truly concerned. I don't do it often, though. Okay, it's only if it's really a genuine concern.
And I'll throw something out there that might seem mean. If your clients aren't responding to you, that's very likely they're not responding to other recruiters unless you're really bad at your job. Like they're just not responsive as people. It's not like they have singled one recruiter out. So if another recruiter is submitting people, then they're not responding to that recruiter either if they're not responding to you. And if people are applying online, chances are they're not responding to those people either. Right. That's just an internally broken hiring process, which if we didn't run into a lot, there would probably be less external recruiters in general.
I would agree with that. What we want to do is not have you spending your time on bad requirements. And the only way to determine if it's a bad requirement is feedback on a submittal. That's it. That's the only thing that's going to tell us at the start of the process whether or not we should keep working on it. Valerie, I totally understand that. Valerie said some of our fee agreements only honor ownership if we submit the resume. The name is not sufficient. My first piece of advice would be talk to your counsel and see if you can change your terms for future contracts, because there is a way to word that in your agreement that doesn't set off red flags for your client and makes it seem perfectly logical. If I share a candidate with you and you hire that person, you owe me money. It doesn't matter if I share the person and I only give you their LinkedIn profile, or I do no candidate presentation, or they're passive and they don't have a resume. Like, there's usually nothing that dictates in a contract the specific terms of what constitutes a candidate presentation. So if you have that in your contract, Valerie, go talk to your counsel. You can't go back and change the ones that are already in place, but I would highly recommend that you modify that clause in your contract so that you can have a little bit more flexibility and ownership.
Yeah, you may remember from our introductions that neither of us are attorneys, but I'd go so far as to say that the presence or absence of a resume in no way for either party determines actual procuring cause, which is what made that candidate made the decision to have a conversation with that client.
Right.
Right. So that's where procuring cause comes from. And I can just farm resumes and send them out, but without talking to them, without convincing them, even if that wouldn't hold up in court if I gave them all the resumes, nor is it if my client says, oh, I already had that person in my database.
That doesn't count.
That
That's
doesn't
not
count either.
procuring cause.
You have not initiated the conversation to get them interested in the requirement, which means legally procuring cause. I get it. They set out they're non-negotiable. That's why we do like our smaller clients.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation, Valerie. If you want to reach out to me, again, knowing I'm not an attorney, but if you want to reach out to me offline, I'd be more than happy to have an additional conversation with you about it. All right. All jobs aren't filled, right? For retained jobs, 67% of them are filled. And one of the things that so many recruiters struggle with is the idea that somebody might pay you an engagement fee or a retainer and not fill the job. That happens, right? We had the question, what if these are engaged or retained searches from John or Lee? I don't remember which, right? Just because it's retained does not mean it's fillable. That those two things are not absolutes. There are a ton of engaged and retained jobs that go unfilled.
Even true business needs. I can tell you, inside of corporate America, as a manufacturing manager, before I was even a plant manager, I needed to fill multiple engineering roles in my plant because we had fired the previous team working on this project right before they gave me the project. And I was told to hire 2 engineers for it, but it came with this from my plant manager: don't hire the wrong person. Because 3 times previously, they had hired a team of people for this project that they had ultimately fired. Right. And so this is a true open job. I had it out there and I was able to get 1 of 2 positions ultimately filled, but they were real. But there was so much internal pressure to quote unquote hire the right person that it was not in my best interest to bring anyone on board.
Right.
All the other managers got fired right along with their engineering staff.
Now, if you go through this prioritization and what you find is that you don't have good jobs, don't recruit against bad jobs. Spend your time doing business development and see if you can find good jobs.
Particularly if you are not a generalist, if you are a specialist, you have a niche. One of the things that I love to do when I get a job is to go and find another job just like it, or multiple ones just like it in the local geography. It does 2 things for me. One is it tells me where I might find candidates with similar skill sets, but it also gives me places that I can do business development that has needs for the same type of people I'm going to be uncovering, so that can go right back into my prioritization, right? Like, so I'm going to do BD anyway because I have to. Nothing qualifies. I may as well try to get ones that are the most like my current jobs.
That makes perfect sense to me. All right. Jason has said this to you guys a few times throughout today's session. Even though we've talked about this very structured approach for prioritization, and we have told you be stringent and do not present a second candidate until you have feedback on that first submittal, and go in order of priority, allocate your time that way, there are still going to be times where you're just not feeling it, right? If you're not feeling it, move to the next one because it's going to come through your voice, right? We hear it all the time. I mean, if you're not excited about the opportunity, you're going to have a very difficult time selling it.
Right. Anything that we can do to, as silly as this may seem, keep ourselves happy on our desk during the day. Think about what it sounds like if somebody calls you up and they're not happy. They're just, basically robocalling their own way through life, and they're not really enthusiastic about doing this call. How long do you last on the phone with that person? How well can that person sell any product if they come across as anything other than fairly pleasant?
I will tell you guys, on my desk, the thing that I would do in this situation usually wasn't to go to the next requirement. It was usually to go to the movies, right? If when you're having that kind of day where it doesn't matter what you do, you call, people aren't answering, people are mean to you on the phone, you're finding yourself getting frustrated more and more. 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, I leave and go to the movies.
Did my client just blame me for their own ineptitude? I'm seeing Beetlejuice.
There you go. All right. Remember, once you have initial coverage, which is one submitted candidate, move on. Move to the next level opening on your priority list. You want to get the most number of available candidates against the highest volume of jobs, just like our raffle tickets. Every time new information comes in, feedback on a job, anything comes in, you have to ask the question, how does this new information change my prioritization and work focus for this exact moment?
If we were, in so many other jobs, a change in prioritization might be very obvious, right? Somebody comes to the door of your PI agency, or perhaps you realize that it's on fire. Either way, your priorities are in your face, they're aware. We kind of have to guide it ourselves throughout the day because in a lot of these situations, we're the actor, right? Meaning we're the person who's causing action and doing action to make whatever, in this case, a recruiting deal close. So the one who's going to go and do the activity has to be the one who's doing the prioritization.
Right. All right. So that wraps us up. So we're going to say thank you to Kortney and thank you to Crelate. And we did something. We don't usually do this, but we love Crelate. And so we put in for you guys, we have arguably the best group coaching program in the industry. It is exhaustive. You get a weekly update, which is the best newsletter in our industry on Sundays. We meet on Monday mornings for traditional group coaching. Jason and I teach live and go deep on something every Tuesday. On Thursdays, we run a group with Rich Rosen where he answers all of your questions.
Sometimes on a Friday, we hang out with you guys.
Right? But it also comes with 50% off all of our other training and the last 4 weeks of recordings. That'll wrap us up, Kortney, and we'll pass it right back to you.
Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for all of the wonderful things that you just talked about and all the kind words that you said about Crelate. I know for those of you that want to take a deep dive into what Crelate's reporting looks like, because I'm biased, I know, but I think our reporting is bar none in the industry. I dropped the link earlier and I put it here again. It will go directly to scheduling a demo with our sales team here. If anyone has any questions, wants more information, as this goes out on the podcast, we'll include Tricia and Jason's more essentials, the link there, as well as their contact details in case you want to do more with them because they are amazing. So thank you both for joining us. Thank you everyone else for being here on your busy day on a Friday of all days.
All right. Thanks, Kortney. Everybody have a great weekend, and I'm sure we'll see you in future programs.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Talk to you all soon.
Bye-bye.